minutes. And just to show that we're all appreciative of everybody who made an effort to come out today, especially the participants, but also the speakers. Like I said, one of the funny things about dealing with Nick all the time is Nick's got good stories to tell. So ask Nick about his adventure that he took to get to Canada this time. You got something to talk about later. Anyway, the other thing, as I said, we like to appreciate all of the work that everybody put into this from the speakers. And to show our appreciation, we have a small gift which President of our association, Lance Miller, is going to give each one of you. It's just our little way of saying thank you for coming up, and we hope you enjoy this. It's a little bit of, it's a Taste of Saskatchewan from the Saskatchewan store. So I actually don't know what's in it. Thank you to Sheila Copeland for helping us put this part together.
Well, that's what Harvey told me. I wouldn't do that. Could be a venison roast or something, right?
Just stay around for supper for that.
I could make a big brown bag. Oh, yeah.
Before we go any further, I'd also like to say a special thank you to Harvey and Sheila and Ian for their hard work. And I think it was a very successful day, so I just want to thank all these people for their hard work.
Okay, we have, like I said, we have assembled these people in front, and any questions that you might have that started from things that you may have missed during the day, you can ask, or if you have a fresh question, I will open the floor. Ian, did you have, I'll let you lead on this if nobody else has anything they want to bring up from previous. Then there's microphone up front to hand off to whoever wants to answer.
I have a question that I think is going to be fairly broad, and it could lead us into a number of questions and discussions, if that's all right. The Canadian Cervid Alliance has got approval from the fairly senior levels of CFIA to begin negotiating an option for managed herds. And the suggestion, and this is not confirmed, it would be that CFI would no longer take any regulatory action in the case of a reportable incident of CWD. As an alternative, then CFIA and the owner would develop, as we've heard, a herd plan and attempt to manage their way out of the disease. And I know we've already covered quite a bit of ground on that, but what I'm hoping is, I know we didn't hear too much from Wisconsin, and so I'm going to ask Amy if she wouldn't mind starting answering. But what we need is we need your best guidance. You know, what's the best approach we should take to begin negotiating herd plans? What's the best way to manage a managed herd? And what pitfalls can we avoid by following your experience?
Well, on the herds that we have managed on herd plans, they aren't real long-lived. The one herd came positive in 2013. That's the longest herd plan we've got in place. So I'm not sure in the long term that I can give you guidance on that, because it's a relatively new thing in the state of Wisconsin. Some of the things we look at and consider on a herd plan are the source herd, where the source and the index and the positives coming, where did they come from? How long ago did they come? Because that depends how we manage the whole situation. I had a slide up there on what we consider when we consider options for our positive farms. One is minimize risk for transferring prion outside the fence. There's no guarantees. We've heard today from those from the wildlife side of things, and we know that there's many ways to transfer it, but anything that we can do to minimize that risk, whether it be we've got a rule going into place now for electrification or double fencing of anybody that comes positive. That rule is just starting to become in the system for being put in place. But disposal of deads, how we handle how carcasses and trophies are handled are in there. The movement of equipment and the disinfection process of that, foot traffic, testing requirements, because we do increase the testing requirements to keep tabs on the level of infection in some of these herds. I'm trying to think of other things that are in some of those herd plans.
You quarantine?
They are quarantined. They are quarantined, yes. And actually our quarantines, we develop a herd plan, but our quarantines, actually our initial quarantine that we put down is a little bit of a herd plan in that there are stipulations in that quarantine for some of these things too, for some of the testing procedures, levels, and processes. Our quarantines are written that they do have a sunset to them. So if you don't have any further positives, that they are going to, and Wayne talked about that a little bit with their herd plan. So our quarantines are written such that there is a little bit of a herd plan right in the quarantine, but then we also put a herd plan on top of that as well.
And how do you control movement if you do?
What is the movement?
Is it a permitted process, or how is a producer able to move product or live animals off the farm?
Live animals do not come off of our hunting ranches, regardless of whether or not it's a positive ranch or not. The only herds that are able to move animals in Wisconsin are those herds that are part of the CWD herd status program, and it doesn't involve hunting ranches. So live animals are not moved off of those ranches anyway. In the case of a breeding farm too, we don't allow any movement off. The only movement off of those hunting ranches that are positive is carcass parts and pieces, and we do put regulations on that. I'm trying to be as clean as we can about the situation. If a head's going to be moved off, it can only be moved off after testing to a taxidermist, a registered or licensed taxidermist, and things such as this. Processing, the meat has to be processed, the carcass has to be disposed of, so those things are put in that herd plan for carcass movement. I mentioned, unlike Colorado's rule, we also have not on any of these herds allowed movement of anything on to the positive ranches. They need to be self-sustaining with either natural additions or their own breeding farm. And the reason being, we don't want to endanger any other herds and bring them into a traceback situation where their farm might be at risk. We don't want to have a Minnesota herd import bucks into one of our positive shooting ranches, come back positive. If those animals come back positive, we would have a traceback situation and their herd would be in danger of being quarantined. So that's why we restrict the movement as we have right now. Will that change in the future? Possibly, because right now we've got this large ranch that came back positive. One of the deer that came, or actually 5 of them that came back positive, were traced back into one of our Wisconsin breeding farms, a farm that moved a lot of deer, and they were only moved 11 months prior. So that makes us really uncomfortable, and that traceback farm is quarantined at this time too. He's telling us, Can I continue to ship into the hunting preserve because I'm already quarantined? We're looking at that. What I'm getting at is every situation is a little bit different and needs to be analyzed on its own merits. Of the timing of it, of the level of it, of infection, of the age of the animals, and hopefully Nick can get in there and do some genetic testing because that's going to give us more information. We don't have monies to go in there and do that on our own. If we find out some of those animals are the less susceptible whitetail and could possibly be, moved 11 months ago, and it would give us greater confidence in some of that, in taking into consideration some of that. So it's evaluation of the business practices, the risk, and trying to minimize everything we can as far as keeping that owner in business within reason of risking anything else.
Can you move to inspected slaughter?
We have not had anyone ask at this time. We have granted waivers of, this is a little bit off topic, but we have granted waivers in some of our quarantined exposed animals to move those to slaughter and to move those to a hunting preserve. We put strict stipulations on that we want those animals dead within 30 days of that movement if they're going into a hunting ranch. So we have allowed movement of exposed animals. No one has asked, because we're dealing with hunting ranches here. They have their own method of disposing of those animals.
And you're dealing with whitetails that hardly ever go to inspected slaughter anyway, right?
We do have a fair amount of slaughter of our whitetails. It's certainly not at the level of our hunting ranches, but we've got specialty meat markets that do take whitetail and for slaughter as well.
Maybe I could ask Wayne, do you allow managed herds to go to inspected slaughter?
Yeah, they can go to slaughter.
Out of state? Out of state or only within the state?
Oh, no, it's all in state.
That doesn't work for Saskatchewan. Margot,
Yes, sir.
can you tell us how you would react to the reality of having managed herds in Alberta? And maybe we could ask Betty to comment for Saskatchewan as well, or Catherine.
My gut reaction would be that it's complicated.
Come on.
Yeah. I think it would be, but there are so many factors that impinge on that. And we just heard some of the factors that leads Wisconsin to look at it on a case-by-case basis. I mean, if it was a herd that turned positive in Peace River, I can't see how wildlife would be comfortable, regardless of what biosecurity you put on that herd, that's well outside our wildlife and zootic area, that would give us a comfort to kind of agree to that. If it's a herd that's in Lloydminster or down in the core of the enzootic area, and that there could be these biosecurity measures put in place to minimize, as we heard, the basis of their program is to minimize the movement of prions to outside of an infected area, outside an infected farm. If we could systematically work through those sorts of mitigations, we might be able to find something that, yeah, I think could be, you're going to hold me to that. Many modifiers might be able to possibly come perhaps to the point where we may be able to agree to that.
Margot, I know you're not planning on retiring, but you're close enough, you can say anything you want.
I've been saying anything I wanted to hear. There was another component to that. But the other thing I heard today that the glue is really stuck on the wall here this time was the fact that this managed herd that they're looking at appears to be increasing in prevalence. And the comment from the audience that could that perhaps relate to increasing infectivity in the soil, and so these managed herds are just going to have more and more and more prion contamination or environmental contamination, in which case you're not going to work your way out. You're just simply providing a situation for more and more and more disease on that. You're going to be the equivalent of the Colorado research pens that have had infected animals in those pens dying unbeknownst for years to the level that you have, so that you have that level of environmental contamination. That would be a real concern for me, I think.
Right.
Okay, I think Sean has something relevant that he wants
Nick's
to.
probably gonna say the same thing, so.
You could also look at the New York example too, right? If you catch it early
Gotcha.
enough,
Absolutely.
so it could go both ways.
See,
But
I was the one who put that on the table.
But I agree that it can go bad, but if it goes bad, like we have with this ranch in Colorado, we can still make hay. If it doesn't go, if it goes good, we can have a result like New York State got. So.
In the issue too, with the Colorado example, the owner didn't follow all the example. You know, what we're trying to develop are these best management practices. He turned known positive animals back out on the ranch, which none of them returned, so now he knows that didn't work. And he also didn't have any faith in RT Quick. So he also turned them known positive animals back out on the ranch, knowing that none of them didn't come back now. So going forward, if we truly clean up the herd and truly remove those positives, we're not putting them back out, that's gonna make a huge difference too.
Yeah, sure it would, but I'm just working off the data we have on the table at the moment, which wasn't going that way.
Okay, I think we had, Betty was lined up, or Betty deferred or passed the baton to Al, or
Yeah, they asked Betty to comment.
I will, but Al needs to mention something first.
Okay.
Just want to clarify a little bit.
Doesn't sound
I'll clarify a little bit about what Ian had said. Senior management did not mention anything about herds, managed herds. It was a research project that Penny had been questioned about. And she had said that it was a research project and it had academic people working behind it that had to direct what they were planning to do. CFIA would support them in that. But it wasn't.
No, I'm sorry, Al, I'm not gonna let you carry on. I'm not gonna let you carry it on. That's simply not true, and I know we're supposed to get along, but you weren't there. And Penny, when we were in Ottawa most recently, I can show you the notes that we took, and she said, yes, we are prepared to work with you towards this goal. And it was not a research project, it was working towards the goal of having the option.
She sent a letter out.
That was back in July.
And it hasn't, she told us she hasn't changed her opinion since that letter.
Well, as I say, you weren't there, and maybe the other CCA people will support me on it, but we were very clearly reassured that this was an option, not simply a research project. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's apparent there's going to have to be some clarification that's going to have to be issued on this, because as Ian said, I was at that same meeting and I came out with the same impression as he did, so there's.
I was on the phone and that was exactly right.
Oh, we've already.
Actually, I'll bring it up with Penny, actually, because her letter clearly states opposite, and maybe she did say something inappropriate. I will ask for clarification, because there is.
Said something very appropriate.
Whatever. I'll get her to clarify her comments, so I'll bring that forward. So.
Okay.
Now we'll step off of that now.
Okay, Betty, go ahead. Sorry. Now.
What we've been advised by Penny was that the CFIA would not, in most cases, be able to put a quarantine on, right? They'd work with the herd as far as the owner and CFIA would sign off that there would not be compensation and that you guys do an agreement. But she was pretty clear with me that there would not be a herd plan that CFIA would be working on with producers. So I guess it's, talking about what would the province do, or what would our role be. I think if there's not going to be a CFIA quarantine, we would have to place a provincial quarantine. We would have to have controls to not have spread and movement of animals off that known infected property. I think I shared some of those concerns about what happens to the prevalence on that herd. If it's shown with ongoing testing that the prevalence is increasing, there would have to be a cutoff point and a point where the whole herd would have to be taken out. At that point, you've already signed off with CFIA that there's no compensation, so the herd's being removed, that's at the operator's expense. I guess I think some of the controls that you talked about in Wisconsin, those make a lot of sense to me, right? You gotta have the carcass controls, you gotta make sure that it's not spreading from the premises, and you've gotta make sure that the prions inside the fence aren't continuing to increase and increase to produce that persistent infection that's never gonna go away. I guess the other question I have is, if there is a herd plan and there's live animal testing, who's paying the cost of that? Is that a producer cost? Where's that going? I mean, yes, I work for the government. But number one is how to control disease. Number two is going to always be what's the cost.
Well, I can give you an answer. I can give you an unofficial answer to that, Betty, is that your deputy minister told me that he's going to pay for it. So.
I would be extremely surprised.
Well, we had that discussion, so I said, we'll it's all on the table. This is the point, is that all of these things.
My deputy minister said that when?
About a week ago.
Interesting.
Good news.
Yeah.
Who's got the mic? Oh, Norm has the microphone. Go ahead, Norm.
Just a couple questions. I apologize, I missed part of this afternoon, so maybe it was answered. But I've heard a number of comments about the disposing of deads, either deads or just carcasses that have been tested. And we heard earlier about the composting in trial. Are any of the states working on composting and any results there? And what is the temperature needed to kill a prion? Whether for incineration or composting, whatever.
850.
And whether it's diseased or not. Margot,
Nope.
are there any criteria in the county system or the municipal system in Alberta? Do they have the say on establishment of new pastures? Or I own a quarter of land, so I can put a fence up around that quarter anytime I want. There's some issues here in Saskatchewan on that. I know it's not direct with CWD, but it is something for the cervid industry here in Saskatchewan.
I have no idea. And I see Gerald gone. Jason, maybe you, with Alberta Agriculture, can you answer his question?
Well, I don't know of any specific things in terms of setting up a new elk farm or deer farm. There's criteria on acreage and fence type, but it's
You were
not
talking grazing
previous use is not part of the consideration. Yeah.
An activation of the
Okay.
He had another question about incineration of dead and temperature to kill prion.
Somebody want
So anybody able to answer that one about incineration of deads?
What do you do with them? What are you doing with them?
Well, in our herd plans, I can't talk about the temperature because I really don't know on that, but in our herd plans, it's spelled out that they're supposed to bury the carcasses under 3 feet of dirt, and they're supposed to have an exclosure for their positive animals. So they're supposed to bury them in a certain part of the ranch that is then under 3 feet and then fenced out to exclude the animals. Again, full disclosure, we have very few staff people out there in the field to really verify whether that's going on or not. I mean, we might be able to see if there's an exclosure, but do we really know if they're burying all those carcasses? I can't, because I don't probably do anything in the field, but that's what's in the herd plan. As far as inactivation or killing of a prion in a fire or heat, I don't really know.
Alex looks like he wants to.
I think it's around 850 C. That's about what it's at. So
It's pretty hot, and whatever they were doing to render BSC meat and bone meal wasn't sufficient. So, but I know there are groups working on composting. I haven't seen any recent publications from them.
No, and we're not looking at absolute reduction, just sort of reduction. How many log reduction are we getting exactly, and if that can be worked into our risk analysis. So yeah, I don't anticipate it'll be completely gone by the time we measure it, but what level are we able to achieve? Darn, that's all I have to say.
Okay. I just want to stop with here just for a second. Does anybody have any questions specific for Gord? Because I think Gord's trying to catch a plane, so if he's got, we have anything specific left for him, we'll ask those. If not, then we can dismiss him.
There's one. Yeah, no. Good. Thank you. It's a
Okay.
pleasure being here.
Thanks for coming up. Okay, sorry, Bruce, you have the microphone. You with the baton.
I guess when we get into this question of, a herd plan or a managed situation, I was fortunate enough to be on that operation 30 miles south of Steamboat Springs in 2009, and I helped them feed actually, and they were feeding on the ground, big sheaves of 4x4 hay, and they were also bunk feeding a whole bunch of record rack. So they weren't applying, it was like Nick has said, it's, very much a big, huge commingled herd, males, females, all ages, all sexes together. So when you take a look at the suggestions that he had in terms of doing some genetic testing, all the pedigrees, handling twice a year, testing twice a year. I mean, in most of our Canadian situations, we've got individual ages and sexes separated. We're in a managed farm situation. We're not really on more of an extensive ranch. When Marco brought the point up where looks like your infection rate's increasing, my question is in a managed farm situation where someone's got an attached hunting operation, I think it'd be dramatically easier to apply some science and end up with a positive result. I was on that ranch and there was no management. It was a very, the Spanish-speaking individuals really didn't care as long as the 2 bales of hay went out that day. So, I'm not sure you can compare most of the Canadian situation to that particular situation.
I'll just say I agree. I mean, it's more or less like managing a wild population, and producers will have a lot easier time at it, testing more frequently, but especially so. Ian, you asked something earlier. I think one of the most important things for you guys to do is listen to most of the things that we tell you to do. If you listened to us when we said to depopulate all the time, then we wouldn't be having this conversation. So we're obviously not wrong or not right all the time, but we're not, CWD kills deer and elk. We're not telling you to depopulate these animals or remove infected animals because we're trying to put you out of business. I'm working with this ranch. I want them to remove positive animals so that they're not transmitting to animals who aren't yet infected, and try to keep that to a minimum. But they don't listen to everything we say, and I can't blame them. I can't. We had 20 positive or 15 positive bulls, each one worth $10,000 or so in a hunting situation. Would you want to throw $150,000 down the drain? Not many people would. So, but now they know they're not going to come back. They're not going to make it to hunting season. There's no use keeping them out there.
Any further questions? Oh, Sheila, there we go. Sheila the mic. We'll probably try to wrap this up in about 5 minutes. I think we're just about at the end here.
These are for our American speakers that are specifically dealing with it in the Farm Service. What is your goal in each one of your states to when you're managing that farm cervid and looking at, as I say, looking at it holistically, the whole, for your whole state. But I know your primary responsibility or your influence or your portfolio is, of course, the game farm. Do you have a specific goal that you think that you're trying to attain? Because that's the thing we're struggling. It's here. It's not going to go away. What's the best we can do? Sorry.
touching that one.
I would say that our goal is straightforward. We're trying to minimize the impact of the ones that are already positive and try as much as possible to eliminate any others become positive. Now, there's certain things you can control and there's certain things you can't. I mean, the only thing we can control is the alternative livestock side of things, as far as doing trace backs and trying to do what we can with behind the fence. Now, we can't control anything outside the fence, but obviously our goal is to try to eliminate any future positives that come up and try to manage the ones that we do have that are positive. Right now, 2 of the 3 are hunt parks. One is heavily infected, and that's where we're doing the research at. The other one might have 1 or 2 a year. And then the last one is a completely quarantined facility that was a research facility associated with CSU. So there's nothing in, nothing out there, and I really don't know if there's a lot of, I don't think there's any elk out there, wild elk around that facility. There's deer out in that area, but that would be our goal. I assume it's probably straightforward for you too. It's just trying to eliminate any future positives and try to manage as much as possible the ones that you do have.
The other thing that wasn't said, but it is a factor and it's a consideration when we're talking about hunting preserves of this magnitude. When you're talking about a preserve that's 1,400 acres and has 1,800 animals on, and you consider the feasibility of depopulating and the cost to the taxpayer of depopulating, I know you can't put a price tag on your wild deer population. Wisconsin has CWD in the wild. I mean, it's there. That's also a factor that's weighing into some of it. That would be a heck of a job to get in those ranches and even begin to start to depopulate. So that is a consideration as well when you talk about something like this. But I totally agree with Wayne. It's do no harm. We try to strive by that. Now I know the wildlife biologists will argue with that by keeping the ranches going. These are businesses. These are individuals that do have legal businesses as well. It's private property, so they have a right to the indemnity, and it's just I can't even begin to imagine going into some of those ranches and starting into that.
Murray.
Yeah. Are we on? Yeah. Well, so I have, I guess, a comment rather than a question, and I think that we've got to change paradigms here. We were at one time looking at eradication. I think that horse is in the barn. And we've got to look at management and control and forget eradication on both sides of the wire. And so the buzzword in wildlife management areas now is adaptive management. And I think that that's a very appropriate term. People want the correct answer today. I don't know that we have any correct answers. I think we're going to have to adopt adaptive management practices for both farmed and wild service.
Anybody else? Harley, are you just ferrying Mike around, or are you looking to talk?
But I do have one question for you. During that 5-year period when the herd is quarantined, let's say they didn't have a death, are the producers required to do a random cull?
Nope.
As long as they can make it through the 5 years here, free to go.
5 years free, yeah.
Do they have to have 100% submission of deads tested?
Yeah, that's even without the herd plan. Yeah, our rules dictate that you're supposed to test anything over 12 months of age that died for any reason. And that's herd plan or not. You're supposed to submit that. And as I said earlier, we understand predation happens, and we've seen them break their neck at the facilities. I mean, stuff happens, and we understand that. So, and Dr. Rohr is very understanding when it comes to that. But that's our goal, is to try to get 100% testing. And some of our ranches, believe it or not, they're out there every day and they do it year in, year out. They get 100%.
Okay. I think our line of questioning is pretty well petered out. I don't see anybody jumping to pull the microphone from Harley's hand, so maybe we'll put a wrap on it there. Again, I'd like to thank everybody who showed up today, both participants and guests, and our speakers who came a long way. On behalf of the association, again, we say thank you, and we have a supper on your own, and the hospitality suite opens at 7:30. What time is it open, Lance? 7 o'clock. The California room, number 251. We have some of the people are staying around, some by choice, some otherwise. So, like I said, you can pin down your favorite person somewhere in between here and there, and if we don't see you tonight, then hopefully see you all here tomorrow morning. Thank you very much.